Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name's Alison, the online piano and the online violin tutor. So today I'm going to do another vibrato video on the violin. I have done two of these in the past. I just wanted to update this video. Vibrato is something that every violinist does do and every violinist will want to do, and one of those videos that I just like to update every now and then, not because the information has changed or not because I teach it any differently or I found a new way of delivering the method to you or anything like that, but just because sometimes if you hear more than one way of doing something, sometimes the penny can drop a little bit, and vibrato is one of those things that most people just don't get straight away, and you don't get straight away. Anybody that says they have hasn't got it straight away, or it's not going to be quite right. So first of all, I want to say that vibrato should not be something you should do if you have been playing for less than a year. I want to say that straight away. The reason is that you need to get a hold of the basics first, and that's very important. And I also want to say that even if you think you've got a grip of the basics and that's only taken you 3 months to do, you just need that year's maturity on the instrument to be able to do the vibrato. So I mean, ultimately for you guys self-teaching, I'm advising you not to. I will put a link to a video that I have done of the kind of checklist of things that you should be able to do before you attempt vibrato. If you attempt vibrato before this time, you will come unstuck. You will encounter many problems. Vibrato will cause a multitude more problems that you don't want. So with the basics, you'll be getting a hang of the intonation, you'll be getting the hang of the fingers, you'll be getting the hang of the bowing, all different kinds of bowing and things like that. So trying to add vibrato to the mix too soon is going to cause a disaster. The main thing is when people do vibrato and they say the violin is shaking. If the violin is shaking when you're trying to do vibrato, that is the #1 sign that you are attempting vibrato too soon. So that kind of little disclaimer out the way, let's get on with the vibrato. So the way I always teach vibrato, and this I do wrist vibrato. There are two types of vibrato. You've got wrist vibrato, which is this one. So you can see that the movement is coming from here. Nothing else is moving. So from the wrist down to the elbow, nothing else is moving. It's just wrist. Some people do arm vibrato. I can't really demonstrate arm vibrato. You generally tend to do sort of pretty much dominate one more than the other. So arm vibrato might be something a bit more where instead of me just moving from the wrist like this, the movement is coming more from the whole, I can't really do it, but the whole arm is moving sort of backwards and forwards. When I'm doing vibrato up here, I tend to do more arm vibrato just simply because, you know, I have to get my arm right into it, and doing vibrato right up here is very, very difficult anyway. But it's still essentially, actually, as you can see there, it's still essentially wrist. So whether you do wrist vibrato or arm vibrato, it doesn't matter. If you're watching this video to get some extra vibrato tips and your teacher is telling you something slightly different to what I have said, then that's fine. It's probably because either your teacher is just using different words or different kind of ways to essentially explain exactly the same movement if we're talking about wrist vibrato, or they do arm vibrato, which is a different vibrato. So if you're doing arm vibrato or your teacher does arm vibrato, you don't want to be looking at this because this is wrist vibrato. So you might find that if you try this as well as arm, you might gravitate towards one more than the other, but they are both very, very nice vibratos. As I said, I can't demonstrate arm vibrato because I don't do it, but they both sound exactly the same. You would never know the difference between arm and wrist vibrato if it's done properly, and both of them are legitimate. Both of them you can manipulate it into doing more advanced vibrato as well and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not going to go into advanced stuff here. So the first thing I always suggest students to do is to have the violin down like this, rather than having it under your chin. Having the violin down like this, and it's easier to understand what the movement is from here. Now my thumb sits here, so as you can see my thumb is in this kind of position and it sits underneath the neck here. Some people have their thumb up like this, and I think those violinists generally, this information might be different, but generally those who have their thumb up like this will do more arm vibrato. Those of you that have your thumb underneath the violin like I do, which again is perfectly fine, if you do something different, that's fine, just saying. For those of you that have their thumb underneath there, you're probably likely to do more wrist vibrato. So I would recommend that you don't play around with that. If you've been used to playing it up here and having your thumb poking up more this way, then I would stick with that way. I mean, you still might be able to do a bit of wrist vibrato, but I mean, I personally find that quite awkward, but maybe because I'm just not used to holding the thumb in that way, so immediately it's more awkward for me. So I have my thumb underneath the neck of the violin like this, and it is in a kind of that kind of curved position. And I think it's easier to use the second finger first. Get used to doing the vibrato with the second finger, then go on to the third finger, then go on to the first finger, and do the fourth finger last. You don't really have to learn vibrato with the fourth finger. Once you can do vibrato with the other 3 notes, the fourth finger kind of just falls into place, but that will happen once the penny has dropped with vibrato. So start with the second finger, and essentially what you're going to be doing is rolling from one side of the finger to the other. So essentially it's going to be, if it focuses, let me get my face out of the way, there we go. So you're going to be rolling from one side of the fingernail to the other. So focus, there we go. So one side to the other, one side to the other. I'm sorry if it's out of focus, it's just, there we go. Hopefully you can see that anyway. So it's rolling from one side of the nail to the other. When you put the finger up like this, it's going to be almost sort of not quite as round as it is here, because you can see my hand is now my hand is parallel to the ceiling. When I have my hand on the violin, my hand isn't twisted all the way round. You'll find that when you do vibrato, you'll need to twist your hand a little bit further round so that it's almost, so you're almost kind of flat, so you're almost waving to somebody. So can you see that my hand is quite turned round. So if I pretended that I was holding the violin, that's the natural position that my hand goes. So this is my hand completely facing me now. That is where I need to turn, and that's just something that I'm just used to doing. My hand is just used to turning actually that far around. So can you see that? There you go. So my hand is perfectly flat towards the back of the camera, and it turns around almost. I can't quite, because obviously my hand doesn't go that far, but by the time my fingers curve out, you can see my hand is quite far round. So that is how I have it for the violin. So if I take that away, you can see I'm still in that same position, and my thumb, you can actually see now actually how bent my thumb is. So what I'm doing is rolling, and the movement is always coming from the wrist. So how I explain it is that the movement is coming from the very tip of the fingernail. That is what is moving, and that is what you should make move. Then it's kind of like an explosion. So the center of the explosion is in the fingernail, and then it kind of goes out from there, ending at the wrist. So as you can see, I'm not moving anything below my wrist to my elbow. So it is all coming from the wrist. But what I am not doing is this. A lot of people, when I teach vibrato, want to do it, and I see a lot of their wrist is moving, or that part of their hand there, the palm of their hand is moving. It's kind of jolting in and out like that. So that's not what you want to do. I am concentrating on rolling, and as you can see, as I'm doing that, see my fingers are quite tucked into each other, but as I am rolling, everything else is going with it. It's like a pendulum motion. So roll that fingernail, and can you see you just want to let everything go with it? And it's all kind of, it's doing this basically, in a sense. It's like you're waving to somebody, but the whole hand is moving, centered in on this part here. So actually you can see that I'm rocking, or rolling, as some people have said. Rocking, rolling, exactly the same thing, but you're going from one side of the fingernail to the other. You might be going ever so slightly diagonally, but obviously your hand isn't, as we said, your hand isn't right the way round here. But essentially you are rolling from one side of the fingernail to the other, and you want to make sure that your thumb is underneath the violin here, so that you have full access to be able to move, and nothing else is touching the violin. So really that is exactly what the movement is, and that is going to take time and practice. You don't want to be doing this. If you're doing this, you are moving the wrist. You just want to be moving the fingers. You can almost see that the majority of the motion is from here and then it's kind of getting less and less and less until you get to here with just a slight kind of, the wrist is just letting my hand go backwards and forwards. It is like this. This is essentially what I'm doing. So that's pretty much it with vibrato. So vibrato is going to take you a really long time to get. It is going to take you months. Anybody who has said that they've got vibrato in 2 days, they haven't got vibrato in 2 days. They might just have a little bit of a, you know, a little bit of that, but it's not full vibrato. Vibrato would be something like, somebody who's got vibrato, because they'd be able to manipulate the vibrato and make it faster and make it slower and do all those kind of things that actually make vibrato. So vibrato will take you a very long time, and that is completely normal. But here's the thing, you must stick with doing vibrato. So don't just do vibrato for a couple of days and go, oh, I can't do it. You're not going to be able to do it. But if you don't stick with vibrato, you won't be able to do it. So what it will sound like is almost like a dying whale when you do it. So that's what vibrato will sound like, and that's absolutely fine because you need to get used to doing that movement. Sometimes I read in the comments underneath where you guys have said, oh, I've been playing for 5 years, or I've been playing for 3 years and I still can't do vibrato. But have you been constantly doing vibrato every single day for those 5 years? I bet you that they haven't, because if they had, they would have got vibrato in about 3 to 6 months. Vibrato takes about a good, I'd say a vibrato takes a good 6 months to fully let it click into place, but you have to be doing it all the time. So you're gonna have to suck up a lot of horrible playing. For example, trying to simulate vibrato from a beginner's point of view is actually very, very difficult, but you guys get the idea though. So you want to do vibrato on the notes that you think you can get vibrato out in. So I just played a little bit of Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis, in case you didn't recognize it, but I couldn't do it on all of the notes obviously, and I couldn't do it on open strings, but I did it on as many notes as I possibly could. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is show you some multiple angles of vibrato, so you can have a look at various different, from the side, from the front, from above, that kind of thing. And I'm going to insert all these clips now. So that's generally it with vibrato, and that's pretty much all there is to it. But like I've said, it's something that you've got to stick with. It's something that's going to take a really, really long time to do, and you've got to work through how crappy it's all going to sound. But if you don't, and you kind of get a bit bored with, oh, it sounds so crap all the time, then you're never going to get vibrato, because you're never going to break through, and you're never going to let it have a chance to kind of develop in that way. So there we go. Thanks very much for watching, and hopefully this video hasn't been monstrously long. I'm going to have to cut it down a little bit, but anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.